Hello and welcome to the Science Fiction and Fantasy Factory. I'm your host, Mookie Spitz. And in the factory today, we've got none other than Sam Robb, a guy from Pittsburgh. Those who join us this afternoon. Thanks so much for making time.
Thank you for having me on, Mookie. I appreciate it.
You're a little more than that. You've got a new book coming out with Selene Press, A Sense of Murder, which I
Yep.
understand it is the fantasy flagship for Selene, I think. You're one of the early books, extension of Canon Press,
Yes, sir.
John Holmes and his crew. So that's exciting. You're kind of paving the way into fantasy for this ostensibly military sci-fi outfit. How did that come together? How did you jump ship? Because you're a Raconteur Press. So
Uh,
there's a little incestuous stuff going on in
yeah.
Texas, in Pittsburgh. Can you give us a little backstory for the science fiction nerds out there? They want to know.
So I started writing back in 2018, 2019, and did a couple of short stories with different anthologies, and then got into a podcast called The Writer Dojo. And that's Larry Correia, Steve Diamond hosted that, and they talked a lot about the craft of writing and what goes into that. And one of the things that they always used to harp on is that the key to being a writer is to put your butt in the seat, put your hands on the keyboard, and just write. So I decided that I was going to do that, and I fell in with a bunch of reprobates that also were listening to the podcast and interested in that. And we called ourselves the Alpha Mercs. We're word mercenaries, and we started critiquing each other's stuff and getting to, helping each other to improve. About the same time, a press started up, Raconteur Press out of Texas. They were doing a lot of pulpy anthologies, kind of like old school style stuff with, Pin-Up Noir was their one of their first books that I was in, and Weird West sort of stuff, and did some work with them, and a couple of our guys in the Mercs kind of drifted over and started working with them and helping them with the press. And then a few years later, a few years down the road, my wife and I got pulled in. She's an editor and I'm a writer. They pulled me in actually to help with PR and marketing because I've got a little bit of experience with that. But in the meantime, while all that's going on, I'm in the Alpha Mercs. We're being word mercenaries, and we got asked to write stories for a Car Wars anthology with Steve Jackson. We've got another anthology with Annals of the Autarch Empire coming out. That's another project that people came and approached us and said, "Hey, would you guys like to help us with this?" And John Holmes had a novella contest, and I had something that I'd written that was a little longer than a short story, and I threw it his way and said, "Hey, here you go for your novella contest." Um, he liked it, turned around, and said, "This is great. When are you giving me a book?" So that's how I ended up writing with Raconteur and the Alpha Mercs and Canon, and any when you're a word mercenary, you go wherever they want you.
Well, it's a mixture of appetite, aptitude, and circumstance, sounds like. So, right
Oh,
guy, right
absolutely.
place. And then you got a nurturing community. I had John on a couple weeks ago, and he really embellished that sense of fraternity where you guys are fist pumping and coaching each other and
Oh
supporting.
yeah.
And that's really nice to hear.
It works really well. We really are a community, and um, some people think like, oh my goodness, if I'm encouraging people to read Sam's stuff, then they might not buy my stuff. Uh, the honest truth of the matter is, it takes me. I'm slow. It takes me about 6 months, 9 months to write a book if I'm doing nothing else. Um, and in that time, you could read, even if you're just like, oh yeah, I read a book a week, right? you need 20 authors, 30 authors to keep your queue full, right? I want more authors out there to keep you reading so that when my next book comes around, you're like, yes, I'm ready for this.
That's the paradox of publishing. On the one hand, there's a tsunami of content. Just everyone's overloaded with it. But at the same time, you've got a group of readers, they read voraciously.
Yeah,
And to your point, it's not a zero sum game. It's not mutually exclusive between writers. Like if they read my book, they're not going to read your book. You've got readers who are consuming a lot of books. And
yeah,
there's room for all writers with talent and with dedication. It's just getting it done and getting it out there.
yeah. I mean, you had uh, Pierce on
Yeah.
last week or the week before.
J. Kenton Pierce.
Yeah, he is a fantastic, absolute knock dead writer. I'm required to say that because one, I'm his friend. Two, Raconteur Press publishes him, but he really is. He's a fantastic writer.
I love talking to him. He lives this stuff,
He
and both
does.
are super nerds into these worlds that we've created. I felt I was a kindred soul with Jay Kenton because he
Yeah,
could just go on and on about his construct, and it was so moving. At the end of the podcast, he actually told me, "Hey Mookie, it's like the 20 minutes where I just went off on my world. Just cut that." Like, no, that's like the best part of the pod to let him just go for it. So I think you need that kind of
yeah,
immersion.
you do. And honestly, right? I will sit down and I will read a bunch of Pierce's stuff, and it's Tales of the Long Night. It's science fiction. It's really great stuff. And then it's like eating steak all the time. Eventually, you're like, can I have a pizza? And I'll switch over to fantasy for a little bit, and I'll read some fantasy, and then maybe I'll do some nonfiction. And then I'm like, you know what would really hit the spot? It's some good science fiction. I'm back at Pierce. So
I'm with you. I actually took the approach to my novel writing, which is poly-genre, morphed up mashup of everything from, William Gibson to Douglas Adams to documentary realism to absurdist comedy. I just threw it in the blender because I have the same kind of manic energy, and I figure let's just have one book do it all.
oh my goodness, that's awesome.
With you in spirit, and you've flipped to fantasy, and you've taken Mr. Holmes and Cannon Press with their new sideline into fantasy. Can you tell us a little bit about how A Sense of Murder came to be? And it's also your foray into longer stuff, right? You were an anthology contributor for years, and now
Anthology contributor, yeah.
you went into bigger novel writing, this being another one.
Yeah, this is I did have one novel in urban fantasy with Raconteur last year, but this is honestly, Sense of Murder is a little more complicated. It's a little more grown up, right? I guess you could say. Um,
It's
but
pulp plus.
it is, it really is. And it all started with a lot of things that I write will start with a snippet or a sentence or something that percolates through my brain, and I jot it down. I've got a huge file. I keep all these ideas and I write them down, and I'll come back to them sometimes. And this one in particular was just the idea of the two kind of central characters, Prospero, who is a magus of the Empire, and Kellen, who's kind of a Wild West outrider lawman sort, um, mashing them together in kind of a magical buddy cop story. And I knew that the two of them liked each other. I knew that the two of them worked together, but I didn't know how they met. So I kind of went back and I'm like, okay, I'll write that story, and uh, it turned out to be longer than your usual short story, so there's no place to put it until John Holmes did his, hey, we're looking for novellas. We're looking for 10 to 15,000 word stories. And I'm like, hey, got this. Here you go. It was something that I kind of wrote for myself, and mentioned the Alpha Mercs earlier. They helped me tremendously in polishing up and getting it off to him. And like I said, he enjoyed where I took the story. And part of, you ask where these ideas come from. I'm very much a pantser, so a lot of times I have the idea of like I've got this big rock and this big rock and this big rock, and when I start filling in the details in between, a lot of things pop out and surprise me. So there's some things in Prospero's character and in Kellen's character and their backgrounds that I absolutely had zero idea were there until I, dropped them on the page, and then I said, "Oh, people are going to think I planned that, and it's absolutely wrong, but I'm running with it."
That's when you know you're onto something as a writer, is when action just emerges as a consequence of throwing your characters into a mix.
Oh
And
yeah.
when you're surprised as a writer, you can be
Hmm.
assured that your reader's going to be pleasantly surprised too. It's not some planned construct. You don't just map it out and then fill in the blanks, kind of do the heavy lifting. You just let it play out. And I think that emergent drama is what makes for great storytelling
Oh,
in general.
absolutely.
In
Yeah.
general, I think you capture it that way and you share that enthusiasm. So I think the readers have a lot to look forward to. John was even telling me that he was at a conference and, he set up his booth and he's got his military sci-fi and he saw the hubbub going on with the fantasy peeps over there. And he's like, I need to get me a piece of that action now too. And you entered with this idea in a
Yeah.
way that was perfect for him to kind of launch an extension of that approach. That's
Which
cool.
is
That's
that's
flex.
that's actually really kind of strange too, because one of I think one of Canon's best series and one of their best selling series, most popular, is Fey Wars, which is, I mean, it's fantasy, but it's more military fantasy. It's kind of
Right.
like, it's a little bit different, I think, or different enough that, someone who's looking for the Hobbit is not going to not going to
Yeah,
trip on that.
kind of a crossover, but it doesn't have that more traditional fantasy flair that would
Yeah.
be a magnet for this ginormous potential audience.
Yep.
And having an opportunity to go through that, and to your point, like exploring different kinds of stuff. I was especially drawn to your October story with Cedar Sanderson, uh,
Hmm.
the illustrator.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really interesting. I had Rick Cutler on the pod just a couple weeks ago too, and he's put out the Man with a Gun
Yeah.
series, the Ostergaard. I thought that was fascinating with the prose, with the illustrations, and you mentioned how you worked with Cedar too in the intro to that. Can you tell us a
Yep.
little bit about that creative process? Because that blending of media to me is fascinating, and I think Cedar's role is interesting because she's popping up in your gang's books in ways that I think are adding a lot of zing.
Oh yeah. Cedar is an unbelievably talented illustrator. She's a fantastic writer too. I mean, she's one of those people that she just hits on all cylinders, right? As a creative. Um, but she a couple of years ago was doing Inktober, where you take some two-word prompts throughout the month of October, and you do a drawing based off of them. And I was looking for uh, an opportunity to kind of force myself to write and think every day and try and do different things. And had been doing some writing prompts, and I said, "Oh, Cedar, would you mind if I wrote a story to go with,
Yeah.
whatever picture you come up with?" Um, and that's what we did. We both knew what the words were at the start of the day. So she's thinking about her picture, I'm thinking about the words, and doing things like looking them up, etymology, trying to get this grasp of what these two words mean, and trying to figure out, okay, where is she going to go with this? And sometimes I hit it, and I had a good story. that matched it. And sometimes uh, she turned up something, and I'm like, I have no idea where she got this, and oh my goodness, now I have to write a story that matches it at 9 o'clock at night. Get out 1,000 words before midnight so I could push it out. That was my commitment to myself. I'd do it before midnight. Um, and I ended up writing. There's one story that was slice of life. There's some traditional fantasy. There's some very Lovecraftian horror. Some science fiction vignettes. One that was based, if you've ever heard of the SCP Foundation, it didn't mention it specifically, but it was an homage to the work that website has done. It just did a ton of stuff, and at the end of it, I'm like, man, this is a lot. I said, would would you be willing to maybe put this together in a book? And Cedar was like, we were all already on the same page, thinking the same thing. So we did the illustration on the opening page, and then the two-word prompt is the title, and then the story that follows. And out of all the stuff I've written, some of my favorite stories are still the ones out of that.
I was drawn to it too. It's just very, very creative. And I think the synergy between you two brought out some of the best. Her illustrations are super cool. And then you take it to the next level. And I love the diversity of it, which was engendered really by the input of her art,
Yeah.
a really productive and fun collaboration. Tell us a little bit about your process now that we're digging in there. In this case, you had the input of these illustrations, and then you were
Mm.
off to the races with each. When you're putting something together, like the sense of murder, and you've got the story with Prospero, and these ideas are floating in your head, and you're a self-proclaimed, self-described prancer. How does it how does it gel, and how does that vibe with your software engineer? Is that
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. I'm a software developer by day.
You've got lines of code, and then you transpose to lines of text. How does it all gel in your head and come out?
Oh man. I wish I could tell you simply because I would love to know how to make it all work, push a button and make it happen. Um, when I First thing that I found that I need to do is I need to sit down and write. Like I said, button share, hands on keyboard, just get going. Um, if I can force myself to sit down and say, okay, I'm going to write 100 words, I will definitely get 1,000 out. That's kind of the way it works. Once you turn the faucet on, things start flowing. Um, I find that it helps a lot if I know the night before. I will think about, okay, what am I going to write the next day? What's coming up? That gives me a chance to sleep on it. The next day, I have the chance to kind of go over in my mind what did I write the previous couple of days, what's leading up to this, and think about where I'm going and how I want this next scene to go. And sometimes it'll be one scene, sometimes it'll be two. Occasionally I'll have a really good day, and a lot of the creative juices are flowing, and I'll get out a chapter or so. Um, but for the most part, I find myself thinking less in terms of situations. The situations are things that I throw at the characters. But the characters themselves, by the time I'm writing the story, I already have an idea of who, you know, when I was writing A Sense of Murder, I know who Kellen is. I know what motivates him. I know what he's afraid of. Prospero, I know what secrets he has and what his background's like. Um, the two of them end up working with a third character who's a seer, a young lady by the name of Nissa, and I know her background, so I kind of know why they don't initially trust each other and why those bonds would form, and I look at it a little bit as like, okay, these are three friends of mine, and I need to make them like each other. So how do I make them like each other? And the answer, of course, as usual, is flaming demon zombies, or something like that. And as one does, trauma bonding. Yes,
What
it brings people
what
together.
could go wrong? So it sounds like they're your friends, your buddies. And then when you map it out, you do a little bit of planning, at least the night before, to let it kind of germinate in your
Yeah.
head. And then when you finally get butt in chair, hand on keyboard, Mike Morton, another
Hmm.
canon guy I had
Yeah.
on,
Yeah.
he shared that acronym with me, and I thought that was great. He went through a whole boot camp of writing best practices. He was terrific, and uh, butt in chair, hand on keyboard, by Hawk
Yes.
was the mantra. So you get it going, and then it's an opportunity for your characters and you to hang out. Sounds like
Yeah.
so very character driven, which is very refreshing. A counter theme is world building obsession, especially for
Yeah.
sci-fi, especially for fantasy writers, where a lot of that time isn't spent fist pumping your characters; it's spent coloring the drapes and describing the Hobbit breakfast. That
Yeah.
that doesn't really make for compelling storytelling. I mean, it's great to embellish, but the heart of storytelling is the passion that we feel with the characters going through what they go
Yeah.
through.
And when you think about it, right? You mentioned Tolkien. His stories are very, I mean, in terms of plot, very simple. You think of this, oh, we have to take the magical MacGuffin across the world, and we're going to face difficulties, and people are trying to kill us. You boil it down to that. It's the characters.
Yeah.
Um, you know, there's not a whole lot of world building in Samwise Gamgee, but everybody loves Sam because of who he is. And same thing for everybody. When they see, uh, in the movies particularly, right? Because you could bring this right to life when you see Boromir deciding to turn around and defend the Pippin and Merry, and give his life as like a restitution for his momentary lapse with Frodo. That sort of thing just like it grabs you, and that's not the world building. You could write that scene, you could write that in 1,000 different books, 1,000 different ways, in 1,000 different worlds. It's the characters themselves that make the story and really propel it. I think sometimes people forget that the fancy worlds are nice, but it's the characters. And I will say though that there are some people, for example, Tim Akers is one. He did a story for an anthology I edited called Pinup Noir: High Class Muscle, and
Great title.
fantastic title. And read his story, and pretty much everything I've read from him, I'm like, okay, this is unbelievably intricate world building and fantastic characters and a plot that like sucks me in and just makes me. Tim, if you're watching this, I want you to know I love you, but I also just hate you just a little bit because I envy you.
I'll
Oh
try
my goodness.
to get him on too, just to piss you off.
No, I would be thrilled for him. He is a fantastic author, man. He really is.
Right. And another counter example, which really isn't, is Andy Weir that everyone's talking about now. You got the
Hmm.
movie, you got Hail Mary, and on the surface, it's similar. You got Grace, who is solving an endless series of problems with his endless know how and abilities. And at the same time, he's kind of a geek and he's kind of awkward, so he's endearing. But when you look through all of that hard science fiction, implicitly it's a guy struggling to survive and connecting with another kindred soul. So
Yeah.
it's a buddy story with a bunch of
Yep.
obstacles thrown them. It's kind of MacGyvery, but it's still really centered on character. So if you want a book to work, and if you want to write a book that works, it's the humanity that drives it. It's not the gizmos and the gadgets and the light speed travel and the artificial gravity and all the bullshit that that usually gets thrown at us with the genre. How'd you get into it? You've got an interesting background, and I do want to dwell for a second on 2020 when you ran for president as a libertarian. Now,
Yes, I did.
I want to punctuate that by saying this is a non-political podcast. We're not going to work it. But the one thing you and Mr. Pierce had in common was that libertarian kind of thread, which translates into certain values. And you're
Hmm.
both excellent writers in that you're not leading with the ideology. You're not leading with politics. You have a value system which flows through your characters and their situations, which isn't driving home a point, but you do have a point of view. And
Yeah.
I find that interesting. And your background's interesting. Can you tell us a little bit about how you got into politics for that blip, what that was like, and then if there's any impact on your writing, on communicating with people?
Um, so that was we'll say an instructive period of time. Um, got involved. Honestly, and this sounds like I'm making a joke, but it's the truth. I was left unsupervised. Um, my wife and my girls went down to Florida to visit family, and I stayed home because I had to work, and I also had to fill out some uh, paperwork, excuse me, for my daughter for to apply for college, the federal student loan paperwork, and I was going through it. I'm like, this is horrible. I bet you it's easier to register to run for president.
Yeah, or it's easier just to pay. That's what I almost did with my kid. I was like, this is a nightmare. Here, just take
Yeah,
my credit card.
you wish you could. You wish you could. You could just go get through with it. But there are certain things that she had to have at least filed that paperwork. So I was doing it, and I went to the FEC site and I said, this really is a lot easier. So that evening, I went ahead and filed as a presidential candidate, thinking, oh well, this is cool. I have certain things that I believe, and certain things that I would like to see talked about. Maybe if I do this, I can be people will say, haha, you're running for president. And I can say, well, yes, but here's something, I have a chance to talk about whatever it is that was important to me. Um, and over the course of a couple of weeks after that, I got in touch with some people from the Libertarian Party. I put some thought into it because I'm like, hey, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to be serious about it. I'm at least make an effort to talk about it because I want people to understand my values. So techie guy, whipped up a website. Here's my platform. Here's A to Z, all the different things, talking, taxation and law enforcement and everything. And that forced me to think a little bit about where I stand on some things. And had got a call from Dan Fishman at the Libertarian National Committee asking me, hey, are you serious about this? What's answer some questions? And before I knew it, I was talking to my wife. I'm like, I think I want to be serious about this. Not because I'm like, hey, I could make a difference in the world. I'm going to be president. But because I saw a chance to champion some of my values within the Libertarian Party. Um, and went ahead with that, started going to conventions, getting to know people, and ultimately, as most of you know, because I was not on the ballot for 2020, I did not get the Libertarian nomination. But I was able to be the first person at the Libertarian uh, National Convention in 2020 to nominate our eventual running mate, or running, not my running mate, candidate. There we go. My the candidate for 2020, which was Joe Jorgensen, um, and Joe did win. She ended up running and asked me if I would be her uh, campaign coordinator for the state of Pennsylvania. So I got involved with Pennsylvania, got involved with the Pennsylvania Libertarian Party, was the Western uh, vice chair in the Pennsylvania Libertarian Party for a couple of years. We had 1 year where I think we had over, I know it was definitely over 200. I want to say even more libertarians elected throughout the Commonwealth. Um, so I mean, I feel like I managed to do some good and get some stuff going. But it also takes a toll on you. Um, my wife at one point, after I got out, after I was writing, um, she said, do you enjoy this more? I said, yeah, I do. It's a lot less. There's a lot less pressure. I feel a lot better about it. And she said, well, you are swearing a lot less. And I'm like, yeah, yeah. So that tells you something about politics. And the really shocking thing is, internal libertarian politics. It was honestly was bad, right? You've got competing factions, and they want this and they want that, and you're going to push back, and there's all sorts of parliamentary procedure this and you know campaign trick that and whatnot. And at one point, I had a chance to talk to uh, Justin Amash, who for a time was a libertarian representative in the House of that House of Representatives, and I said, "Have you, is it better in the other parties?" And he's like, "No, no, it's worse. All the stuff that you're dealing with, you magnify it. It's worse everywhere else." So I can tell you that if you are interested in a political party, the Libertarians honestly are the ones that get along best, apparently.
Well, everything is relative. I just think the libertarians have a unique opportunity in this culture where we're so ultra polarized between left and right, and at the same time, there's the moderate middle with the Venn diagram coming together, and they all want lower taxes, ideally less government, and more common sense. And essentially, I think the core of the libertarian platform, when you eliminate all of these factions and nuances, is exactly that.
Yeah.
And I would hope they could or should do better. I'm buddies, or at least was buddies with Nick Gillespie, who is the editor at large at Reason.
Oh,
Do you know
Nick's
Nick?
awesome. Yeah.
Nick Gillespie?
Yeah. I've talked to him a couple times. He probably doesn't remember me, but yeah.
Yeah, we used to fist pump because I worked with an advocacy organization, Ideas
Mhm.
Beyond Borders. He's on the board of directors of that outfit.
Oh,
So
awesome.
our paths crossed. And I think he just had Neil Gorsuch on his podcast. So he's doing pretty well for himself. But I was
Cool.
always, elbowing that this is the libertarian moment. And I think he's aware of some of the conflicts and the
Oh,
different
yeah, yeah.
ideology and marketing and just getting change to happen without it being thoroughly corrupted from the inside out. It's very
Yeah.
challenging. But let's go back to the writing, because that same sense of independence,
Hmm.
creativity, if you will, too, don't tread on me, is definitely the centerpiece of Pierce's writing, your buddy. I
Yeah.
mean, really at the core, it's the space frontier is an essential theme of his universe, and the constant battle between the man, the G, the government, the agency, the corporation,
Yeah.
and the rogue settler, the colonist, people who just want to be left alone.
Yes.
How does that filter into some of your writing and your creativity?
Um, eh, it's interesting because it's always there. I mean, it's my viewpoint. It's the way that I come at things. Um, so, for example, in A Sense of Murder, Kellen is a very independent individual because he's essentially a circuit judge in an outland area that's being rebuilt, and he's responsible for keeping the peace and keeping order, but he's just one man, so he can't really force people to do things. He finds himself having to convince people to do things. Um, and to me, right, as a libertarian, that's kind of my ideal. So there's definitely a little bit of me in Kellen, but I think Pierce would probably agree with me on this. As someone who is in that third corner, if you will, of politics, uh, with freedom versus individual responsibility versus group, or freedom versus government or whatever. Um, because we're not generally surrounded by people who believe the same thing as we do, you have to get familiar with all the arguments that are coming at you from the left, from the right, from the authoritarian camp, from the various other sides, and you learn to see what the appeal is, because that's how you learn how to argue against them. So, for example, in Sense of Murder, while Kellen is very independent, he has a talent for seeing the truth. He can see people's auras, and he hides that, not just because it gives him an advantage, but because the empire that he is, he serves a king. The king has sworn fealty to the empire. Um, he's in a place where if the empire finds out that he has this talent, it's incredibly valuable. They would sweep him away in a heartbeat, and that would leave all his people basically dealing with all this stuff that he's done his best to help build up. It would be taken away from him. So, but on the other hand, when you start getting into it and you realize, for example, what's happening in the book is they find that there's a demon that's been murdering children. That's very early on in the book. That's the inciting incident that brings them together. And what's laid out is that, yes, that's why the Empire does these things, because while Kellen is an honorable man and a good man, someone with his talent who wanted to use it to manipulate people and to coerce people could very easily, rule or topple governments or worlds. So it's not that they want to necessarily be authoritarian, but for the safety of people, they need to deal with these potential threats. If you think of it like, okay, what would you do if Superman was real and he was, if he was a jerk, right? Same sort of thing. How do you deal with this? So I think, and I tried very hard, and I think I presented a couple of different viewpoints of, freedom versus responsibility versus government versus individual duty, to try and give the idea that none of this really, in the real world, none of this really shakes out in a very nice manner. It's all a mess, and a lot of it is trying to get people to understand, you know, just how do you interact with other people. That's not just in the real world. That's my characters as well.
There's a lot of complexity with these issues. Right now, we're grappling with AI,
Hmm.
prediction betting, host of issues, and it's that dichotomy and that inherent conflict between regulation and freedom. And then if we all agree that there should be some kind of regulation, who's actually going to be doing the regulating, and how, and to
Yep.
what extent? And that's a core libertarian dilemma as well. And you bring up a terrific point too. And one reason I like the libertarians so much is that they have a meta view of things. You've got fairly traditional left and right wedge issues, and they bundle up in sometimes ad hoc ways, but they tend to polarize in camps. They lose perspective, and it's not based on the issues. It's just rooting for your home team. And all
Yeah.
common sense and debate is thrown out the window. And the libertarians, the good libertarians, they hover above it and they slice and dice things based on issue to issue, and this notion that government is not something that you should take for granted one way or another.
No. You know what? I think that is probably, if you get right down to it, that is probably one of the best encapsulations of not like the libertarian principles or whatever, but the libertarian, let's call it the libertarian ethos, right?
Yes,
Government is not something that you can just let happen. It
yes.
has to be very deliberate every step of the way, and that doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be the same even day to day, or from subject to subject. So that's actually really good. Thank you. I'm going
You're
to use that. I'm stealing that.
that hits me in the face so frequently. I tend to listen to a lot of news and punditry, so I'm writing and I'm taking all this stuff in, sometimes simultaneously. And I hear this so often, it's ubiquitous, where someone will say, either on the left or on the right, "Oh, that's illegal," or "that should be illegal," as
Mhm.
if it's Moses coming with the tablets down. Illegal based on who or what or how, and it's just so taken for granted. And
Yep.
that to me is the core of the problem, which is just, how do you define it? How do you create a taxonomy around it? And it's frustrating, but within the context of the worlds you're creating,
Oh yeah.
you've infused this in a very personal conflict between your characters in the story.
Yep.
I love that, and that's a great
It's
driving force.
it's awesome too in terms of, and that's always been a big kind of plus for me for science fiction and fantasy, particularly modern science fiction and fantasy, is that you have the opportunity to kind of say, okay, we're going to take a step back, or we're going to move forward 400 years, or we're going to move to another planet, and we're going to give you something that is kind of the same, but not really. And then we're going to let you see yourself reflected in this kind of funhouse mirror, and maybe that'll make you think a little bit differently, or just think, period, about some of these issues that you're dealing with.
That's been the strength of science fiction going back to inception, that sense of projection, relative safety. Long time ago in a galaxy
Galaxy.
far, far away. It's got nothing to do with us, but they look like us. They talk like us. They break all the rules of physics, just like our science fiction writers do.
Yes, yeah,
and so it's safe, but it resembles our society enough so that we could draw parallels, and then it's up to us how deep we want to go. Do we just want to be entertained, or does entertainment for us constitute some critical thinking, analysis, and comparison culturally and
yeah,
in our ideology? And that lends itself to a great reading experience, a great movie, if it works. If it
yep,
works.
yep,
And one point though I'd love to bring up with you has been this evolution and oscillation of these values in science fiction. So if you go back to Star Trek and the early shows, if you do delineate by party or ideology, they tend to be lefty. They tend to be more progressive, especially for that time. You
hmm
had DEI going on the Starship Enterprise. It was deliberate, where you had a multiracial, bi-gendered crew, and then you had a mission, which was to boldly go and yet not interfere, not meddle. They were the opposite of an imperial force. The
hmm
prime directive of Star Trek is literally, don't be an imperial asshole, right? Like, if you find a planet, leave them alone.
hmm
You can't meddle. And the enemies, the Klingons and the Romulans, were the ones kicking ass and taking names. And then you've had this change occur slowly, where science fiction, being a reflective of our society, hasn't just been progressive, kind of lefty, but it's also brought up a lot of the values that aren't opposite to that. It's not like Pierce is anti-humanist. It's quite the opposite. But it's a very different perspective about the role of government, as we're saying,
Mhm.
our society, and how we want to, create and experience the good life. There's a marked change in science fiction and fantasy. It's fragmenting, so you got all sorts of different writers doing all sorts of stuff. We love that. But I just find it refreshing that there isn't this monolithic point of view where, again, it becomes very ideological.
Yeah, there's I'm trying to, I think it was Jim Butcher who said your story can't preach harder than it entertains.
Yes. That's a great line. See, now I thank you for a great line.
You can put something like that in your story, but it's still got to be a good story. And the old Star Trek or Star Trek Next Generation, right? Um, some of those episodes are absolute classics because they're fantastic stories, and yes, they have some moral wrapped up in them. Um, but they first and foremost they entertained, and that entertainment was the bait and the hook that that planted that idea in your head about, but what if what about, could we, and then that story sits there and it's the fertile ground where that seed grows. um I think we did for a time lose that art, and the idea that stories, yes, stories are important, stories influence culture, but if you turn stories into nothing but something that influences culture, they're no longer stories, and they no longer work the same way. Um, One of the reasons why Raconteur Press, in all honesty, goes back to the pulp era, and when we put out our open calls, we point out, right? We say that the very first primary requirement for whatever it is your story must be entertaining. After that, we can, everything else is negotiable. If it's a 3,000 word story and it rocks our socks off, we'll talk to you about it. Maybe we'll talk about how to make it a little longer. If it's a longer story and it's really good, we'll find a place for it. But it's got to be entertaining first and foremost, because that's what stories are for.
And when the story is raw, naked, to your point, simple, it becomes automatically archetypal. And you don't get blinded by your own bullshit. So to this day, I think my very favorite movie of all time is Pulp Fiction, Tarantino's
Mhm.
masterpiece. The title, it's Pulp Fiction. If you look at the individual stories that make it up, and it's a non-linear narrative, and it's genius in terms of how it's told and the decisions he made, et cetera, it's character driven, da 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 da. But to your point, though, it's Pulp Fiction. You have a boxer who refuses to listen to the mob boss, doesn't
Mhm.
go down in the fifth, and they're after him, right? You have a briefcase full of the ultimate MacGuffin, and they're really just trying to get it back. It's when
Yep.
you layer the individual stories, you have the mobster's wife who needs to be taken out on the town. Hilarity ensues. The simplicity of the telling is what makes it really strong, and it puts the onus on the writer, on the creator, in this case the writer, creator, director, to focus on characters and to make it real in a dramatic sense that's compelling without all of the scaffolding and all the extras. And there's a purity to that, and if it works, it's beautiful.
Yeah,
And it's
it
a
is.
great
It is.
lesson to learn. I think Hemingway said that if you write a story, you know it's a good story if you take all the best lines out of it and it's still a good read.
Oh man, that's true. Although as a writer, right, I do like those good lines. I really do.
I'm guilty as charged. I just lay it on. So sometimes more is more. and that might not be the best practice, but it all depends on your approach and if you're true to yourself and what you're trying to do. So what does the future look like for your writing? You're writing bigger stuff, you're
Oh,
branching
yeah.
into other genres, you have a new relationship with a new publisher, or again, you're all buddies. But how do you see your career evolving? And your role goes beyond just the writing. You do, to your point, I get press releases from you in my inbox from Sam Robb with all the latest new stuff. And so you're promoting, you're doing PR.
Hmm.
And do you do any editorial? Do you work with the team for editorial stuff, or you're just more on the market?
Very, very occasionally, very lightly. I mentioned I edited that one anthology. Um, my wife is the copy editor.
Okay, you got the team.
She's absolutely fantastic. She does a lot of stuff with Raconteur. They have a stable of very talented copy editors and very, very talented structural editors. Um, so yeah, for the future, I'm going to continue to work with Rack. I love being able to help my fellow authors, and I'm actually translating some of what I learned as a political candidate and a political manager into trying to help promote them. So yeah, that's fantastic.
I was gonna tie all the threads together.
Uh,
You did it for me. So what goes into being a candidate for a political party.
oh
Again,
yeah,
it's all about messaging. It's all about behavioral change. It's all
yep,
about getting people to keep believing in what they're believing, but they believe in what you believe in with them. So
yep,
don't swim against the stream. Find your target audience, people who love to read, love the genre, but you got to get in front of them. You need to build
yeah,
excitement and work with them. John was talking about the model too being 50-50, which is he's got his network, they do covers, they promote, but then the onus is on the writer to self promote and to get it out there and
yeah,
to show up at cons and put the pedal to the metal and have the metal to sell your books and do that.
yeah,
Does that come naturally to you? Some writers are more I just need to write this thing, leave me alone. Other writers are
yeah,
more on the
and
salesy side.
it's a shame. It comes a little bit more naturally to me. I've had some practice because of the politics. I'm also a teacher and a preacher, so I do. I'm not a pastor. I don't lead a church, but I do get up in front of people and preach. So I've learned how to put my ideas together and express them and do it in a way to help people get my point. Um, when it comes to some authors, there are definitely some people who are like, yeah, I just want to write the book and get it out there. And why do I need to talk to people at all? And the answer to that is the same answer that we would give to candidates in politics, right? You can hire a campaign manager, you can hire a finance manager, you can hire a fundraiser, you can hire someone to put your suits together for you. There's one job that cannot be hired out, and that is being you. You're the only person that can be you. You need to go out there and meet the voters if you're a candidate, or meet your fans if you're an author. They want to meet you. They want to talk to you. They want to understand what's in your head and why you wrote this. And ooh, are you going to and get a little hint of what's coming down the line? And they want to. They're fans. They're fanatics. They love what you're doing and they want to be a part of it. Uh, you know, I don't think that there ever was a time where you couldn't do that. I think just it's in the last couple of years, the last couple of decades with the social media that it's become really apparent that this is what's happening, that you need to learn how to connect with your fans because that's what they the story's awesome. What they want to do is hang out with you afterwards.
Yeah, 100%. I was over at the LA Times Festival of Books a few weeks ago, which is like 130,000 people all pack
Oh
into the
wow.
campus of University of Southern California. And they've got booths, and they're just rows and rows of authors and publishers and cartoonists and creatives, and everyone assembles. And the people descending were active and engaged readers. And to your exact point, they want to talk to the writers, and they'll
Oh yeah.
embrace a new writer, an unknown writer. They're like, tell me about your book, pitch me. Whereas
Yep.
you could go to some of the Comic Cons where everyone's very distracted with cosplay, and
Hmm.
it's very visual, and just old school novels and books and short stories are old hat for to a certain extent. It's harder to sell novels and what we do at the cons, but the LA festival, it was like woo, and that was amazing. And writers need to do that, and it's so refreshing regardless of where you're at in your trajectory as a writer, whether you're just getting started, you have one book, you have 10 books, but to actually interact with people, to pitch your ideas, to have them hold your book and talk to it, have them buy it,
Yeah.
ideally have them leave a review and follow up. We forget that sometimes because the art of writing, the craft of it, is so solitary by nature.
It is.
And Socrates was skeptical of writers. That's why he never wrote anything. We're thankful that Plato was sitting there with the tablets, right? He was like getting the Elenchus transcribed.
What do you have there, Plato? A
Yeah,
smoothie?
yeah.
No.
Nothing. Don't mind me. And Socrates just felt that writers were disingenuous and untrustworthy because you couldn't interact with them. You couldn't see them. You were just reading the map of their mind. And only a
Hmm.
direct interaction was genuine between people. And I used to think that, oh, really? Come on. But I've realized, especially with all the doom scrolling and the saturation of social media, and especially misinformation and the sludge that's out there, just being one on one with people, talking to them and getting to know them is gold. And to your point, if you fall in love with a book, there's a person behind that book
Hmm.
with a heart and soul and a yearning to connect.
And the flip side of that, which is straight up marketing, right? If you are a fascinating guy and you tell me that you wrote a fascinating book, I'll be like, oh, I want to continue on this listening to you. I want to hear more. I want to read that.
Right, right. As opposed to just, again, doom scrolling or shopping, and then you're drawn to a cover. The cover's good. You need a
Hmm.
good cover and a little synopsis. But again, to your point, like, what is a raving fan? They're making a connection. They see you as a flattering reflection of themselves. And if they have
Yeah.
an opportunity to meet you and be enthralled, then more power to you and more power to them. And you build your base. And at the end of the day, why do we do what we do instead of selling crypto or real estate? And most of us, all of us, pretty much, unless we have a granny who left us a few $1 million, are still working
Yeah.
and doing that. So we have to ask ourselves, why? Why are we putting ourselves through this? What's your answer to that? Why do you do this?
I can't not. There's stories in my head, and they want to come out. I will either years before I started writing, I was blogging and political blogging and talking about the news of the day and whatnot. And then I would be on my way into work and something would filter down into my head and I would be thinking, there's a dentist in Pittsburgh that is dealing with a dragon who needs a new tooth or a tooth pulled. And once that's in there, I can't get it out. It's just kind of sitting there taking up mental space. And for my own mental health, I need to at least get it out on paper. Um, and I did that more times than I can think. And honestly though, most of us, if we say, well, I just write to write. If that was the case, then you would write something in a journal and put it off to the side, and nobody would ever read it. Um, Most of us write because we want to communicate with other people. We want to express an idea or something, even if it's as simple as, wouldn't this be cool? Dude, wouldn't it be cool if, um, and just these ideas that we have, we want to connect with other people. So circling back to what you said previously, if that's what you want, then use it, do it, talk to people, get to know people, meet with people, let them get to know you because you've got some cool ideas, man.
That's that counterfactual. What if is the axiom of driving sci-fi fantasy for sure. And it's the connection that's the emotional driver of that. I've got a DJ friend, Howie Wallach. I've known him since childhood. Great guy. And he's got a meme that he, like a button that he wears, and it's on his Facebook profile there. And it says, "Do what makes you happy." And you've got all these ideas popping out in these stories, and it makes you happy to get them out. And you're willing to endure the opportunity cost of not selling crypto, not selling real estate, and not doing an infinite variety of other things except, butt in chair, hands on keyboard. You've got good days and bad days, but for you, it's totally worth it because that idea needs to get out, and that's what makes you happy. And I find that very relatable, that I just feel good when I just release stuff, like let
Oh
it
yeah,
there. If I'm ranting on TikTok, and I just write all sorts of stuff, and my branding probably sucks, which is why I chose this Mookie multiverse to kind of house everything in. What is this guy doing? Because I'm doing all sorts, like politics, culture, art, science, screenplays, short stories, novels, blah. But I just need to do it, and
yeah,
it's so satisfying to do it. And I'm willing to incur opportunity costs too. Just take a financial hit. I don't even care if 100 people see it or a million, or I make $10 or nothing. It's just I need to let it out, and it's so satisfying. And if you could find that, then it's go code.
yep. And honestly, when you think like that, right? There people in history that have done exactly what you're talking about. Like I can't just keep my doing one thing. I've got to be all over the place. And we look back on them, and they're people like Da Vinci, right?
Yeah,
They are on fire. They create. I've got a friend, David Badarina. He's a terrific writer. He is hilarious. He's done podcasts. He's got like award-winning AI generated edited videos that he does. I mean, he's all over the place. Um, but he is having a blast doing it, and it's so much fun watching him do it too.
it's a really good time to be that Renaissance man. And whether you're really good, you could be Da Vinci level or a moron, but as long as you're just gunning it, it's great. I get solicitation all the time. I'm sure you do too, from fraudsters and from
Oh
vendors.
yeah.
So, well, your content is perfect for Netflix, and I've got a deal signed here. And then I get tons of emails from all over the place for YouTube optimization. Like,
Yes.
you've got thousands of videos and your SEO sucks. And I'm like, I know. I'm just too busy, too busy barfing this stuff out. But the two ends meet with just the joy of creation and the opportunity to connect with readers and to connect with fellow authors too. It's really joyful. So I want to thank you for sharing your time and your mind and your ideas, and participating in this exchange, which is just intrinsically rewarding. And hopefully our viewers and listeners feel the same way, hearing us yak, and we embrace liking and commenting and subscribing and sharing and participating. So it's a hell of a ride, and I look forward
Yes.
to diving into a sense of murder. I tried to look for the sample, but it's just a preview.
Yeah, it's still on pre-order.
It's on pre-order, so
Yeah, May 17th. Yeah,
I want to dive in there and look forward to just seeing your career evolve too. It's great to see another creative person going wild.
awesome. Thank you, Mookie. It's been a pleasure being on with you.
Yeah, and keep sending your press releases. I'm gonna hound you to see what other writers I could
Oh, I will keep sending them to you. I will keep sending them to you.
I can interrogate on the show. Thanks so much, Sam. Keep doing what you're doing. You're
Thank you,
awesome.
sir. Back
Yeah.
at you.